Hello again. As you know, I am Eli, the computer guy, and today we are going to be talking about loss and change as a technology professional. So this is a big topic in the field of being a technology professional, and unfortunately it's one of those things that if you don't deal with loss and change well, it can cause all kinds of problems, right? Loss and change, this is a normal part of everybody's life, but especially for technology professionals, if you don't deal with it, again, appropriately, if you don't deal with it well, it can be very, very, very detrimental to you. Again, remember with our profession, we are not like other professions. We are not factory workers. We are not bricklayers. We are not cooks, right? A lot of other professions that are out there, part of the fundamental concept of the profession is that these people really are cogs. Realistically, what these people get paid for at the end of the day is to take a widget, transform the widget, and keep it moving on down the line. Basically, in one way or another, they do one task and they replicate it 1,000 times a day, and that is what they get paid for. So with a lot of other professions, with loss, with change, dealing with grief and things like that, it's not really bad for them professionally because they can kind of just, muscle through, right? If you're a miner or if you're a farmer or if you're, like say, a factory worker, right? You can be pissed off. You can be half hungover. You can have a headache, right? And it'll be miserable for you, but you can sit there and you can just do your job. Whereas with technology professionals, every day we should be doing things that are different. So many of the things that we are doing are things that we have to come up with ourselves, right? If you are a systems administrator in a company, a lot of times people aren't going to be directly giving you tasks. You have to come up with your own tasks. I mean, back when I was a regional support engineer flying all over the country, my boss, literally, I was in Baltimore, and my boss was literally in Denver, right? If my boss needed to scream at me, he literally had to hop on a plane for 3 hours just to land so that we could have a discussion, right? So with technology professionals, we have to be internally motivated to do things. And so with things like grief, with things like loss, with things like change, if we don't deal with them appropriately, it can cause all kinds of problems, right? Because again, like I say, a factory worker, they can be miserable and just keep doing their job. You take a geek and they are miserable and they can't see straight and they simply stop working, it's all kind of bad. So this comes up right now because unfortunately, sadly, Tonto had to be put down 2 days ago. Yep. So Tonto was our last corgi. We had Tex, the corgi, that was in that showed up in a lot of my old videos, my daily blob videos. He was always the corgi that popped his head up. We lost him back in January, and then right afterwards, Tonto, his brother, was diagnosed with bone cancer in the skull. Which didn't seem to be too bad for a number of months. For like 4 months, it really didn't seem to be that bad, and then 5 months wasn't too horrible, and at 6 months it started to seem a little weird, and then 7 months it started to get bad. And basically what happened was, it wasn't the cancer itself. Like we were told when we would have to put Tonto down, we thought it was going to be the cancer, would kind of like physically kill him. We were told that normally with bone cancer it spreads, the first place it spreads is to the lungs, and so that he would just start losing lung capacity at a certain point, and then basically the lung capacity would go away and away until essentially he wouldn't even want to get up or eat or do any of that kind of stuff. So that's what we thought was going to happen. Instead, it didn't really seem that the cancer spread at all. It just kept growing in the exact same place. So he had the cancer like right here on the back of his head, and then it just kept growing and growing and growing and growing to the point that literally the cancer, I mean the corgi's head is only that big to begin with, and the cancer was bigger than I could put my hand around. And so what happened is it was on this side of the head, so it totally squeezed his ear canal and all that closed. And then it pushed this ear down, which was kind of funky, and it kept growing back, right? But then the issue was it actually started growing so much that it was pulling the skin, so the skin couldn't grow fast enough for as fast as the tumor was growing underneath. And so his eyes started going, like getting slanted and back to the point that he couldn't, it's like his bottom eyelids were too high up for him to see properly. And then it got to the point where he could barely even close his eyes because the skin was too tight. And then it got to the point that the skin was then literally growing or the tumor was growing so fast, it started splitting the skin behind the tumor, right? So it started splitting and started all kinds of badness. And so, it's one of those things where, there are days it really, really sucks to be an adult. All you 14-year-olds out there, all of you 14-year-olds out there imagining how you think the adult world should do that stuff, please let me just say for 1 second, some days it really, really, really sucks to be an adult because you got to make decisions at certain points. And basically that decision, it got to the point, like I said, he wasn't even sleeping very well anymore, and he was having all kinds of problems. And so we had to put Tonto down. Now, again, some of the 14-year-olds out there are going to be sitting there going, okay, Eli, that's nice. Wah, wah, your dog died. Sad for you. How does this have to do with technology? I mean, again, Eli, you seem like a good guy, and so I'm sad that your dog died, but what the does this have to do with being a technology professional? Well, as I talked to you guys about a lot with being a real technology professional, is one thing that most people don't think about enough is that your profession should be guided by your personal needs and desires. So a lot of people out there, I would say they do things ass backwards, is where they have their career and then they model their lives, their social life, their spousal life, their dogs and all that around their career. I would argue that your career should be based upon your needs within your life. What do you need? Are you able to work 50 hours a week? Can you only work 30 hours a week? Do you have a spouse? Do you not have a spouse? Do you have dogs you have to walk? All this kind of stuff, right? And so with Tonto dying, for me, it brings to close a period of life that was very specifically pushing how I thought my professional career was going to go in a certain direction. So, as I talked about before, again, I met my wife a little over 10 years. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary of knowing each other. We're about to do our 8-year anniversary of marriage. But basically, I met my wife about 10 years ago. I'd come back from Thailand, from getting beat near half to death. It was kind of like that quintessential story. The man comes back from an adventure, goes to the bar to meet his friend, ends up meeting the love of his life, and A, B, C, D. Basically, we moved in together officially after about 3 weeks of dating. Unofficially, we basically moved in together after about 3 days of dating. But officially, we moved in together after about 3 weeks of dating. Then we got a house after about 4 months, and then we got Tex, the dog, Corgi, after about 8 months. We actually had a Corgi before Tex, but unfortunately, that Corgi died of what's called parvo after about 4 days. But anyways, so we got Tex, and then a little bit later we got Tonto, and then we got married. And the thing is our life was going along with what I thought was going to be, the start of a pretty normal life. Again, as I've talked about before, I have an exceptionally bizarre life. And apparently this spaghetti monster wants that to continue. But anyways, I thought that this was the beginning of a rather normal life. And so I was modeling my business and my career that way. That's one of the reasons I settled down, actually opened up the shop and got the additional employees, because I thought I was settling down, right? So I like to go off adventure and do stupid things, and that's not necessarily a good thing if you're starting a family and all that. So I figured, okay, I'm going to focus my energies on doing a business with employees and all that kind of stuff. Basically, the idea of stability. Even after that failed, again with with doing the videos, Everyman IT, which turned into EliTheComputerGuy.com, it was still the essential idea of that basically, the whole idea of, having a family, and therefore whatever business I created, I wanted to create something that was relatively stable. Again, somebody like myself, I get a lot of offers for flying all over the world and doing all kinds of weird stuff for money. But the issue is how you grow your business is how your business will continue. So again, one of the problems that people have, especially when they're starting their small businesses, is they'll do absolutely anything in the world for money, right? You want me to fly all over the world, I will do it. Well, that then becomes what your business does. And then when you have a kid, and then you have 2 kids, all of a sudden, in order to pay the bills for those kids, your business is about flying all over the world to do stuff, which means you're no longer at home. All right, so basically the idea was building up this whole thing for family and all that. As I've talked about before, my wife had cancers. We got through all of that, and then at the end of last year, basically, we realized kids were off the table. Just how it is. The end of that 10-year thing. And so basically we were sitting there in a house that is just way too effing big, with us and 2 corgis going, wow, now what are we going to do? And so that was the first place where currently I was dealing, like I say, with a loss and change, because the idea is basically for, at that point, about 9 years, it had been built. I thought I was building along the path in order to have a normal family life. And so if I was going to have a normal family life, again, there's that stability aspect. And so once we realized that wasn't going to happen, that's when we started talking about traveling and doing some other stuff. We started talking about traveling, we were talking about going off and doing things, and then that's when Tex died. But the thing was, Tex really barked a whole hell of a lot. Tex was a great dog, but he was an annoying dog in many ways, and so we could not take Tex into hotel rooms. We could not take Tex in a travel trailer and travel around the country. He would just be obnoxious. So that when he died, it allowed us to do this whole RV thing, travel around the country, do the RV thing, see how that goes. And then we just had Tonto, and Tonto is a great pup with that, and so we're taking him around, and now he passed on. And the reality from Tonto now passing on is that we have an incredible amount of freedom. So way back when we got the dogs, one of the things that I said to my wife is I said, listen, dogs are sentient beings. These creatures actually really do have emotions. Cats are a little weird. I think cats have a little more emotion than we give them credit for, but dogs have a lot. You can actually go and hire a dog counselor, psychiatrist. Now, as goofy as that may sound in a lot of ways, it does go to say that there really is a lot of psychology. Dogs get depressed. Dogs get sad, right? All this kind of stuff. So, one of the things with how my business was growing and how I was doing everything is I really restricted travel. I say for family and for dogs and all that kind of stuff. Even if we weren't going to have kids, the question was, how much could I travel? And then with Tonto, with him being sick, I definitely didn't want to put him in the kennel because that would just be sad. Can you imagine putting a terminally ill dog in the kennel? Corgi, that would just be depressing, right? So it kind of restricted a lot of things. And so now that Tonto died, has passed on, it allows for a lot of a flexibility and allows for us to do a lot of things that I couldn't have done before. And this is very relevant professionally. So like literally, when we were in West Yellowstone, that was the last place we were at, we were in West Yellowstone, I thought Tonto was gonna survive longer than he was, and I had actually received an invitation from someplace in Utah, Primavera, I don't know, someplace, no, Idaho, someplace in Idaho. But there was a group that actually wanted to meet me, and there was a lot of people there that wanted to meet me. But because of Tonto's sickness, one of the things I had to tell them was like, well, that's going out of our way. I really don't want to move Tonto too much because he gets sick, and so I had to not do that, right? And so with him passing on, it allows for a lot of fundamental flexibility that I didn't have in the past. So the first thing that I want you guys to be thinking about whenever you guys are dealing with loss is to question what opportunity opportunities are now open to you now that you lost whatever it is that you lost, right? As human beings, we have this real tendency to look at the downside. There's actually there's a lot of psychological work on basically that human beings are more afraid of loss than they are motivated by gain. So if you told somebody that they could either make $100 or lose $100, they would be far more afraid of losing $100 than they would be motivated to make $100. Loss is something that is just very visceral, very just a part of our being. And so one of the issues that comes up is whenever you have a loss, is that people focus on the loss. I lost, right? And the loss becomes the thing that they see. They get tunnel vision upon the loss. And they go through the whole stages of grief about denying that they should have been lost, they should have had lost, and they start bitching at people and they start screaming and they say why it shouldn't happen, but they get very tunnel vision on the loss. And they don't think that, again, with every loss, that it opens up opportunities. Everything that you have, there is always a give and take. And that's one thing that a lot of people don't think about, but it's very important in the technology profession. Everything that you get, everything that you have, has a price. And it has a continual recurring price. So if you have a job, if you have a wife, if you have dogs, if you have a house, if you have all of these things, you get benefits out of that. They're wonderful benefits, but there is also a price that is paid for that, right? So if you go out and you have a job, right? So you have a job and it's a good job and you're paying the bills and all those kinds of things. There is a price to having that job that you may not be thinking about. And one of the prices to having the job that you may not be thinking about is that you're not looking for other opportunities, right? Again, people get very tunnel vision. So I get a job, I get my 20 bucks an hour or 30 bucks an hour or however much an hour, and then I get settled into my job and my job gets very comfortable, and then I keep just doing my job and I get my little 3% raise every year and I just keep going along. And now here's the thing, for the first year you're probably getting paid pretty well. In the second year, you're getting paid not too bad. In the fifth year, well, you're getting paid adequately. But if all you're getting is your little 3% raise every year, by the 10th year, you're getting screwed. Right? Because if you're a technology professional and if you're keeping up with technology, you're being a good professional, you're learning all the things, you've signed up for Pluralsight or CBT Nuggets, you go to meetups, you're keeping up with stuff. If all you're getting is your nice little 3% raise every year, that basically means you're losing money. 3% raise, when you look at inflation, basically means you're staying exactly where you are. You're only getting a little bit of a raise. And so the issue is when you have that job, you know, you're sitting there and you're like, well, I have a job and I have coworkers at the job I like, and I'm able to pay my mortgage, and I'm able to keep my spouse happy, and I'm able to keep the kids in school, and so I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing. Even though there may be 1,000 opportunities out there that will pay you twice as much to get somebody like you, but you're not even looking at those because there's a risk there. Well, the thing to think about is if you lose your job, right? Let's say you get laid off, you get fired, all that kind of stuff. Yes, you have lost your job, but one of the things that you have to look at is what opportunities does that then open up? What opportunities have you not looked at before? There are a lot of people out there, you know, that talk about wanting to start a startup company. I really want to start a startup company, but, you know, my medical benefits are too good. Well, guess what? If you get laid off, your medical benefits are gone. You know what I'm saying? If you're unemployed, you have the same medical benefits as if you're running a startup company. So maybe is now the time to think about doing a startup company. So the first thing to think about is whenever you go through loss, is think about what opportunities it opens up. Again, and you know, when I talk about things, especially on these videos, you do have to realize I do have to get a bit focused on the topic. So like with this, I'm talking about your technology profession. Again, with loss and grief and all that, there's a lot of other things to deal about, but you know, right now we're just talking about your technology profession. And so one of the things to think about is, again, something like if you get divorced. You get divorced, it's very sad, that's very horrible. But one of the things you might consider is that now means you have a whole bunch more time in your life, right? Again, anybody out there who's married realizes, your spouse gets a big chunk of your life. You sit down, you make dinner with them, you have dinner, you do this, you do that, you do the other thing. It's great, it's wonderful. I love my wife, right? But on the other hand, she takes up a lot of time. If my wife didn't exist, I could work 12, 13 hours a day and not think twice about it, right? And so again, that's the thing where you think about with opportunities. Okay, we do this loss, but what opportunities for my profession does it bring up? Again, like I say, I loved having our corgis. Tex and Tonto were absolutely awesome dogs. Really, honestly, I thought they were going to be around another 5 years each and would have been happy for it. But again, now that they've both passed on, the thing to look at is that now gives a lot more freedom in life. Like literally, if I got a phone call tomorrow and they said, listen, we're going to pay you a lot of money and it was a good offer that I want to take, I could literally hop on a flight tomorrow and not think twice about it, right? I can give the keys to the truck to my wife and be like, I'll be back in a week. Because there's no longer that requirement that I deal with those things. So one of the things to be thinking about, especially with your professional career, is again, what opportunities are opened up? Because so many times we get so focused on what we have that we don't think about these other things. All we want is what we had before. All we want is Tonto back. All we want is Tex back. All we want is our job back, right? But think about what opportunities opens up. Now on that, the thing that you have to be careful about is trying to maintain the status quo. And again, this is a huge thing in the professional world, and it's very sad to see. But just because it's sad to see doesn't mean 99% of the world doesn't do it. One of the things you have to realize about the human brain, right? The human brain apparently uses the most energy of any muscle or organ in the body, right? For you to think about anything, for you to think about anything at all burns simply a tremendous amount of energy. So the thought process, when you're trying to figure something out, right? When you're trying to figure out a new solution to a problem, that burns a lot of energy. If you do any task that requires like constant thinking, you'll notice you'll get really hungry. So like right now, when we take the travel trailer, we hook it up to the truck and we drive for like 8 hours. It is amazing how hungry I am at the end of the day. And the reason is, on some of these roads, you have wind, trying to whip the trailer back and forth. You have cars you have to deal with. You have road conditions you have to deal with. There is so much, when you're driving a travel trailer for 8 hours, it is constant thinking, because every moment is slightly different than the last moment. So the brain has to keep up. It has to keep analyzing the current conditions and figuring out what you should do next. So the issue is in the natural world, the brain cannot think all the time. If the brain thought all the time, you would simply burn through too much energy. You could not consume enough calories to survive in the wild. And so what the brain does is very interesting. You should read about all this kind of stuff. Don't take my word for it. Read about it. So what the brain does is the brain comes up with routines. So thinking, really thinking. Every time you think about something, there's a lot of inputs that go into it, and there's thoughts. How do you explain thought? You think about something. But then there's routines, right? So basically what the brain does is it starts to come up with routines. So like when you have a dog, when you first get a dog, right? When you first get a dog, you have to figure out how to feed it. What food bowl, what bowl are you going to put the food in? How much food are you going to put in there? What kind of food are you going to give them? When are you going to feed them? Are you going to give them a bowl in the morning? Or are you going to give them 3 bowls throughout the day? So on and so forth, right? So you first get a dog, and you have to think about all these things and just figure it out. It's completely normal. But the interesting thing that happens is within about a week, what happens is that the routine gets hardwired into your brain so that you no longer think about it anymore. You wake up in the morning, You grab the bag of dog food, you grab the cup, you pull out the amount of food, you dump it in the container, and you walk away. You're no longer really thinking about feeding the dog anymore. You're simply going through a routine. You know, like I say, with Tonto, every time we would come back to the trailer, you know, at first we had to think about, do we bring Tonto out immediately, or what do we do? After a while, it's like, okay, you come to the trailer. Every time we come home, we immediately take Tonto out, we let him pee, we let him poo, then we bring him back in. It becomes a routine. And so we have a lot of these routines in life. If you have a job, right, you wake up at 6:30 in the morning, you brush your teeth, you eat your breakfast, you leave in the car at 7:15 in order for you to get at 8. And at some point, all of this stuff almost becomes automated. You realize how automated things become, especially on commutes, where, you know, there are those times where you start driving and then you arrive at where you're going to, and you kind of forget what the drive was like, right? Because the drive was just so, it just becomes automated. So the issue with the human mind is the human mind really wants to automate these workflows. It wants to automate these tasks. As much of your life as possible, it wants to turn into a routine, because routines do not burn very much energy. Routines burn far less energy than actual thought processes, actual thinking. And so the problem that I see with a lot of tech professionals and a lot of people in general is that when you go through a loss, the first thing that the human mind wants to do, is it doesn't want to think. It doesn't want to analyze the new possibilities that are open to you. It doesn't want to relish, you know, opportunities that can now be taken. What it wants to do is it wants to maintain the status quo. And it is important to understand this. Maintaining the status quo is actually, in fact, a survival mechanism, right? Because if the status quo has worked for you for the past 30 years, there's a good chance the status quo is going to work for you for the next 30 years. And so basically what the brain wants to do is the brain wants to continue the status quo. If I have been going to work at 8, if I have been showing up at work at 8 o'clock every day for the past 10 years, the brain wants to continue showing up to work at 8 o'clock, right? Its overriding need is to get back to the status quo. So again, like I say, if you have something like a dog, if you have a pet, and the pet dies, the first thing that the brain wants to do is it wants to maintain the status quo. It wants you to go out, and it wants you to grab another dog, and it wants you to put that dog into your travel trailer so that you can continue to do the routines that you have been doing up until this point. But the problem is, with that, is that's not necessarily the best thing for you, especially in the modern world and being a tech professional. Again, you know, our brains evolved for us to be relatively simple creatures. I know everybody has this idea, you know, you go to New York City, or you see a car, or you see a spaceship, and you think about how complicated humans are. But so much of that is in the past 200 years, which is, I mean, just that quick when you think about things like evolution and all that. For most of us, I mean, there was a time not that long ago when most human beings would never go farther than 25 miles from their home. You know, there was a time not that long ago that if whatever your profession was, you know, whether you were a farmer or whether you were a blacksmith, mainly was what your parent did, right? If your father was a blacksmith, you were going to be a blacksmith. If your father was a farmer, you were going to be a farmer. You were a farmer because your dad was a farmer, because his dad was a farmer, because his dad was a farmer, because his dad was a farmer, because, right? You know, you just do it. And so again, status quo, you just keep doing the status quo, because what the hell else is there? But in the modern world, things change massively. Again, if you look at the technology field, so we're in 2015 when I'm taping this video, you know, back in 1995, the world of technology was massively different. I mean, imagine a time when Windows 95 was brand new. So what I want you guys to be thinking about is that whenever you go through the loss, is that just give it some time to think about what opportunities are available to you now, now that you're not doing whatever it was before. And to realize that if you're trying to jump back in, trying to just, again, like I say, when people lose jobs, they're just immediately they want to go out and get another job. And to think about it and be like, well, hold on a second. Is it really good to get another job? Again, if you're, let's say you're a programmer, right? So you've been programming, you've been in the enterprise world, you've been, in your cube for the past 10 years, programming away, you've gotten your nice salary, all that. Again, right now, there's a huge market for freelancers. Now, I know you're used to doing a 9-to-5 job or an 8-to-5 job or whatever, but think about it. You may have the skills that allow you to go to be a freelancer, make 3 times as much money as you used to for half of the amount of work. And you don't have to be a boss, right? But one of the things is you have to give yourself time to figure out what is going on, because so many people, again, like I say, they just try to jump right in. The most important thing is that I have somewhere to go at 9 o'clock in the morning. Now, the next thing to be thinking about, again, with this whole idea of status quo, and especially being technology professionals, is one of the questions you should ask, if you're getting fired or if you're getting laid off, are you getting laid off or are you getting fired for normal business reasons? Or are you on the first wave of what is to come? Right? So now if you go and you have a job somewhere, right? People get fired, people get laid off for any number of reasons, right? Maybe the accountant embezzled some money. Maybe the company is losing money. Maybe you just don't fit in culturally to the company, right? All these kind of things happen, right? And so again, one of the problems that happens is people get fired, and then as soon as they get fired, they immediately want to go and find another job. But one of the things you should be thinking about is that, remember, our careers, the field fundamentally is changing every 5 to 10 years, right? Every 5 to 10 years, there's new technology out. There's things that are more valuable than other things. Things that used to be valuable are now worthless, so on and so forth. So one of the things that you should be thinking about if you get laid off or if you get fired is the question of, is this a normal business thing? Right? A normal business thing, you got fired because you got fired, right? Okay, so fine, go find another job. Or are you on the first or second wave of what is to come? So think about like the telephone system administrators, not voice over IP systems, but the old-fashioned, the analog and the digital telephone systems, right? When those people started getting laid off, the first thing that you may want to do is immediately go and try to get another telephone system job. But if you looked at it, you would realize that those particular telephone system jobs were going away. That technology was becoming obsolete. So one of the questions that you have to ask yourself is, instead of necessarily going and jumping into another job, is to look at what is happening with the industry. Look at the market conditions and think to yourself, I got laid off now. Where is my skill set going to be in another 5 years? If you're a Java programmer, if you're a JavaScript programmer, if you're a web app developer, and you get laid off right now, and you think about it, where is web app development going to be in 5 years? We might not be exactly sure where it's going to be, but there's still going to be a crap ton of web app development. In 10 years, there's going to be a crap ton of web app development. Probably in 15 or 20 years, there's going to be web app development. It may not look the same as it does today. It might not be JavaScript, but the web is the web, right? So if you get laid off as a web app developer, you can feel pretty confident going back and getting another web app development job. But if you're in one of these other technologies, like I say, you get laid off as a standard telephone systems administrator, and you think to yourself, where is this going to be in 5 years? And you may realize that there is not that much future in what you were doing, right? You got laid off now, but it's not really a question of if you were going to get laid off, it's when you were going to get laid off, right? At some point, it's all going to go away. Again, I would argue with like MCSEs, Microsoft System Administrators. If you look at Microsoft Azure, again, I may dislike Microsoft for a lot of things, but I will give them credit where credit is due. If you look at Azure, that is a real damn nice cloud infrastructure setup they have, the platform that they have. So one of the questions to ask yourself is, okay, I'm an MCSE, I just got laid off from my job. Do I believe that the MCSE position that we have been doing for the past 20 years almost at this point is going to continue to be relevant? I would argue at this point, not as much as it used to be. And so the thing is, instead of immediately jumping into another job, whatever job you can get, maybe this is the time for you to go back to college. Right? Maybe this is the time for you to go to get a certification. Maybe if you're an MCSE and you get laid off right now, maybe this is the time to go, you know what? That Eli, the computer guy, he has been saying coding is where all the money's at for the past 5 years. And, well, I'm laid off anyway. I might as well learn to code, right? So that is something to think about when this kind of event happens to you, is are you just trying to get back to where you were, or are you going to start trying to build for where the future will be? This is one of those things that you really, like I say, it's very interesting when I see so many people, because so many people, they just want to get back into that thing. It's like with the United States and factory jobs, right? Oh my golly, politicians scream about factory jobs, and the populace everybody screams about factory jobs. But the weirdest thing that I don't know anybody who actually wants a factory job. I have family members, I have a couple of family members that work in factories. Like, they actually have factory jobs. One of my younger cousins, woman, works in a Honda factory. And she really likes working in a factory. And let me tell you, she is the only person I know under 60 that likes working in a factory, right? So you have all these people, again, like I say, we need more manufacturing in this country. And he's like, yeah, but nobody actually wants to do those jobs. But people focus on that thing because that's where the past was, instead of looking at what the future is and where they should be going. So these are some of the things I want you guys to be thinking about, with loss and with change. And again, whether it's your dog, or whether it's losing your job, or whether it's losing your spouse, that everything is an opportunity. And again, like I say, I know I come off crass or arrogant or whatever in all these videos, but one of the things a lot of the 14-year-olds don't realize is I've had to think about this a lot. This isn't something where, I've been sitting there over a joint, wouldn't it be funny if my spouse died or something? Again, like I say, with my wife having cancer 2 times, believe me, at a certain point, you start to feel like the spaghetti monster is trying to tell you something. And so there was a lot of worry way back when. Well, not that far back when, actually, that she wasn't going to make it, that the cancer would spread and things would go badly. But that's one of the things that I had to look at and I had to come to terms with, is looking at, again, I love my wife. Again, we basically moved in together after 3 days, so absolutely adore her. But there was a realization of what is past her. If she dies now, I say if she dies before 40, what is my life past that? And one of the real facts is, if she went away, that gives me a lot more time to do work, right? And again, we're talking about your professional development, not necessarily anything else here. So on that line of thought, one of the things I also want you guys to be thinking about is about how to continue on when you are dealing with grief. Because again, this is a big issue that I see, is a lot of people have loss. And again, whatever that loss is, some people are devastated when they lose a pet. Some people are devastated when they lose a parent or a spouse or any of that kind of stuff, right? And one of the things that I want you guys to be thinking about, though, is that there is a difference between going through grief and wallowing in grief, right? So grief is grief. If you've gone through grief, you know what the hell grief is, and if you haven't gone through grief, well, you're going to go through it at some point, so you'll figure it out then, right? But grief is one of those things that you have to go through. And it's a natural process. Everybody goes through it for whatever. You grieve for your dog, you grieve for your spouse, you grieve when you lose a business, you grief. But one of the issues that I see in the modern world, especially with a lot of this hipster populist crap that I see, is that there has become a... what do you call it? There has become like an honor in suffering. There is this feeling that with a lot of people that they should suffer. that by suffering, this shows that you are a real person, that you're a real human being. If somebody isn't suffering, then that just means yeah, they're whatever, they're arrogant, they're douche, they're an asshat, or whatever else. So people really want to show that they're suffering. And again, this is one of those things that can be very self-destructive, because grief unto itself sucks. Grief just sucks, right? It's just one of those things you got to go through. You know, when you get the fever, you got to go through it. When you're going through, when you have grief, you got to go through it. But the reality is that there will be a time after the grief, right? There should be a time after the grief. You know, no matter what it is. You know, you lose your dog. You know, you lose texts. It takes you a year to get over it. You lose your spouse. It takes you 10 years to get over it. But the reality is there will be an 11th year. There will be a 12th year. There will be a 15th year. And there will be a 20th year, right? And so the issue that I see with a lot of people is that they feel this grief, but then they feel that they really need to show that they're suffering. They really need to be in it, right? And so they kind of just wallow in it, in the grief. And so everything becomes about the grief. Everything becomes about the loss. But the problem is if everything becomes about the loss, if everything becomes about the grief, then there is nothing else. There is no room for anything else, including your own personal development and including your own just getting by, getting on to your next thing. It's kind of like when my wife had the cancer, especially when she was going through the breast cancer, and it was very hard at that time. And so for me, creating videos, you know, I just didn't have the wherewithal to create videos the way I had before. I basically, like, before she had cancer and all that, you know, I was trying to build my business. I was working 12 hours a day. I was really gung-ho. Once she had the cancer, you know, my mind's just not there. Just how it is, right? But the thing is that I didn't stop. And that's what a lot of people do, is they get into the grief condition and they wallow in the grief. It's all about the grief. But the thing is that you're going to have to think about is that there will be a tomorrow. And again, like I say, there will be a next year. And so you need to keep trudging along as well as you can. I'm not saying what speed you need to go at. But again, just slowly moving the ball forward as fast and as far as you can. If it's a centimeter a month, that's still a centimeter. If it's a millimeter a month, it's still a millimeter. It's still going forward. So like when she had the cancer, and a lot of times I just couldn't think straight, right? And so instead of going out and getting sponsors, and instead of doing this, instead of doing that, I mean, there were times that I might get one video out a week. One rather poor quality video would get uploaded. But here's the thing, right? And they weren't the greatest videos in the world sometimes, and they weren't the greatest classes. They're not exactly something that, you know, I'm like, hey, look at what I did. But there was something. But again, for me, if I put up one video a week, which would, I mean, what does that take? 5 hours maybe? You know, 5 hours of work a week. But that's one video a week. In a year, that's 50 videos. You know, and that's one of the reasons why I have the video catalog that I have. If you go and you look, like 1,000 videos or whatever, is because it's just that continuous. Maybe I can't get out a video a day. Maybe I can't get out 5 videos, you know, 3 videos a week. But I'll get out 1 video a week. Or I'll get out 1 video every 2 weeks. I will get out just as many videos as I can focus on getting out. And again, even if I get out 1 video in a month, that's 1 more video than I had before. If I only get out 1 video a month for 12 months, that's still 12 videos. That's still something. And so that's the thing to be thinking about when you're going through grief and all that, is to think of just to focus on what you can do. Right? So right now, I just signed up for Pluralsight. They are not a sponsor. They're not paying me a dime. I am paying them $49 a month. But I just signed up for Pluralsight. So Pluralsight is one of these these online education platforms that do a much better job at coming up with coherent classes than I ever want to. Pluralsight, actually, the way I found out about Pluralsight was about a year ago when they came to me. And I went, wow, you guys have a good platform. Yeah, that seems way too, I'm too ADD for what you guys are trying to do. But I just signed up for Pluralsight, right? And so with Pluralsight, you go there and they've got, who the hell knows, 10,000 classes or something like that. But basically, there's a little Android app. So I have my little Galaxy Note 4. I installed Pluralsight on that, so I can go and I can go, oh look, I need to know more about vSphere 6. And I can click, and they have like a 6-hour class on vSphere 6. And I can learn about, is it IPAM? They just have all this kinds of stuff, right? So again, if you're sitting there, you're like, Eli, I can't do anything. You know, again, lost my wife, lost my spouse, lost my job. Man, I can barely see straight. Eli, you're talking about moving the ball forward. Eli, I can barely see you to tomorrow. And believe me, again, I understand how it is, right? Again, one of the reasons I come across so callous sometimes is because I go through this shit. And as I've said, what the hell are you gonna do? Again, when your wife is diagnosed with her second cancer, you know, it's like you can either lose your fucking mind or you can keep going on with life, right? But the thing is, and so you're like, but I can barely see straight. And so here's the thing. If you got 49 bucks a month, which if you're an American, you should have 49 bucks a month, think about just subscribing to Pluralsight. I actually like Pluralsight. Again, I just pay for Pluralsight. Think about subscribing to Pluralsight. And then when you're depressed and when you're going out for the walks or when you're in the doctor's office or when you're in any of these things, just put in the little earphones, click on a class, and just put it in your pocket. Don't worry about doing the pre-tests and don't worry about doing the post-tests. Don't worry about taking notes. Don't worry about... Just have it coming into your ears and just listen about IPv6, right? Because you know, like I say, if your wife or your spouse is dying, your parents are dying, who the hell knows what's happening, right? You're losing your house, right? You're going to be driving, and when you drive, you're going to turn on the radio, and you can either listen to Taylor Swift, you know, shake it off, or you can listen to IPv6. Well, here's the thing, and think about this in all seriousness, right? So even though you're miserable and you're crabby and you're cranky and life is going to hell, and frankly, you're not even really sure you want to wake up tomorrow, and this has been going on for a while. And again, you know, this isn't a therapy thing where you just need to go off and get some drugs. This is just your life really fucking sucks right now. Here's the thing. And let's say you're going through that for 6 months or a year. Imagine if for those 6 months or a year, every day, all you do is you turn on Pluralsight and you listen to an hour of material about whatever the hell looks good to you. You know what I'm saying? Photoshop, whatever. And you just spend an hour. And in a year, you've listened to 365 hours of pretty good quality technology training. Do you think at the end of that year, just by simply, again, moving that ball just a millimeter forward every single day, that you're not going to know a lot more about IPv6, that you're not going to know a lot more about cloud infrastructure, that you're not going to know a lot more about AWS and Active Directory and all these stuff that Microsoft is doing? And by the time you get out of that, even if the only thing in your brain is a whole bunch of definitions that you now know what AWS is, and you now know what vSphere is, and you now know what all these products are, that is going to put you ahead, right? And so that's one of those things that I want you guys to be thinking about is what can you do, right? And again, like I say, you know, I did this video. I just published it today, but I did it like 3 weeks ago. I did a video on, like I say, on therapy, you know, going out there and getting drugs, right? You know, sometimes that's the thing, your brain is messed up and you just need to get into place. And other times, just bad crap is going on. No amount of talk therapy is going to get you through it. No amount of drugs is going to get you through it. It just sucks. But the question is just moving that ball forward, you know, just a little bit, you know, where, you know, can you go with that? Because the thing is, what you're going through now is going to end. And again, like I said, that's one of the things I had to deal with my wife having cancer, and that's one of the things we talked about. One of the reasons why I did business, even when she was going through the cancer, even though honestly I didn't have to, is because we didn't know how it was going to end. And that's one of the things my wife told me. She was like, I don't want to die and you not have anything, right? You know, even if she died and I ended up working 14 hours a day, working 14 hours a day is a hell of a lot healthier for me than just sitting there staring at a wall, right? And so that's one of the reasons, like a number of years ago, I made some bad business decisions. But that was the thing, how do you put it? There were bad business decisions, but they were good life decisions, because it wasn't as important that I was profitable right at that point. It was important that the enterprise continued, if that makes any sense. So that's some of the stuff that I want you guys to be thinking about with loss and with change and with grief and all of that as a technology professional. Because again, I see this as something that a lot of people go through, again, you know, doing the Silicon Trailer meetings and all that. And again, I mean, and that's, you know, death and loss and all this stuff is a part of human existence. It's what we all go through, you know. If you haven't lost anybody that's important to you yet, just give it time. Again, life. Nobody gets out of it alive. You know what I'm saying? But again, the thing to be thinking about is that one way or another, 10 years will go by, right? You know, one way or another, you know, if you're 40 now, at some point you'll be 50. If you're 20 now, at some point you'll be 30. The things that you are going through now will at some point be a memory that you can't quite remember correctly, right? And think about that. No matter how horrible the stuff you're going through now is, no matter how painful and all that, at some point it will become this vague memory. You will remember what it was, and you will remember what happened, and you will remember some pain and all that viscerally, but you'll start to forget the details. That's just how the human mind works. And so the thing is the question is once you get to that point, when you're at that point where you're forgetting the details about what's going on now, where are you going to be? Are you going to be further down the road actually doing something, or are you still wallowing in that stuff from so many years ago? That is the question. That is the question. So think about that. Think about that. Whenever you go through loss, whenever you go through change, whatever it is, remember everything you have has a cost to it. No matter what it is, however wonderful the thing is you have, it has a cost. So when you lose that, you also lose that cost. So think about that, right? You know, now that you've lost what you valued, what opportunity does that give you? Again, does that give you the opportunity to work for a startup company? Right? You know, if you had a wife that you loved dearly, I mean, I saw this with a technology professional, a real technology professional I knew. It was sad as hell. Oh my God, that guy just took it in the nuts. But he met a woman. I knew him before. He was single. Met a woman, absolutely fell in love. Absolutely fell in love. They were together. They were doing the happy home thing, and then the woman's, his wife's mom died. Right, just out of the blue. It was like cancer or something. Or cancer. Everybody gets cancer. The new flu. Anyways, got cancer. Died, and she just lost it. Just fucking lost it, right? I mean, lost it in about every way you could, to the point that it wasn't even really much of a divorce. You know what I'm saying? It was like, yeah, I can't even imagine that kind of divorce. You know, like when there's a divorce, when it's not even between you and the person anymore, they're already just gone, right? But anyways, but it allowed that person the opportunity. They were a coder, and they had the opportunity then to just fly off to San Diego and have a good old time. They liked San Diego. Opportunity came up. Their spouse had lost their damn mind. Fuck it, I'm going to San Diego, right? Every problem, right? everything that you go through, there are opportunities that present themselves. And so that's why you have to be careful. Again, as I say, with the human mind, we always try to go back to that status quo. We want what we had, and we try to replace it, right? You see that a lot with, a lot of people that have second marriages will go to their third marriage, and the reason is because the first marriage, they get married for stupid reasons, right? And it fails. Hey, whatever. But the problem is it fails, and then the brain goes, I'm supposed to be married. And so they get married to the next one rather quickly because they're trying to recreate the status quo. I was married, I should be married, I get married again. And so a lot of times the second marriage is basically about how the first marriage was, and then that goes bad, and then you start to think through, and then they go on to the third marriage, right? But that's one of the things, and so that's one of the things to be thinking about is, are you just trying to get back to the status quo? Especially, like I say, with your profession, your job. You get laid off, you get fired, whatever. Should you go back to what you were doing? The other thing to be thinking about, like I say, is when you get fired or laid off or any of that kind of stuff, because that's what happens, right? If you're in the technology profession, you're going to get fired or laid off at some point. Just how it goes, unless you're with the government. One of the questions you also should be asking yourself is, are you actually happy? Again, a lot of people, you get into a job, you're doing what you're doing, you're paying the mortgage and all that, and one of the things that gets left out of the equation is, like I say, is, are you actually happy doing what you're doing? A lot of people, I've seen that with a lot of programmers, right? A lot of people get into programming for the money. Stupid idea just to get into it for money. They get into it just for the money. And so they're going along and they're doing it just for the money, and they're miserable. But it's a job and it pays the bills. And then they get fired, and the question is okay, do you really want to go back into that, or maybe you want to go off and do something else? Right? So those are some of those things to be thinking about. And again, at the end of the day, like I say, grief sucks. You go through it. The thing that I would say is, don't wallow in it. There's become an honor in wallowing in suffering. There's become an honor in wallowing in grief. One of the things that I've always been surprised about with it's become more recent actually with comments in the YouTube videos, is when I talk about earning money, when I talk about being able to have a vacation or buy a new truck or whatever, one of the weird things that I find is so many people will comment, don't I know how many people are hungry in the world? Don't I know about all the Syrians suffering? Don't I know about how much all these other people are being miserable? So I should be miserable too. It's like, no. I'm sorry for the Syrians. I've given the Syrians some money. Well, I haven't given it. I've given the UN, or not the UN, anyways. But that doesn't mean I need to suffer, right? And that's one of the things that I see is a lot of people, they feel like that suffering is a badge of honor, right? I am suffering, and therefore that makes me more legitimate than somebody else. And I don't see how you get out of that. If all you're doing is focusing on the suffering and you're just going into that spiral, then how do you ever get out? Again, as I would say with grief, deal with grief however you want to deal with grief. If you want to go out and you want to get a 12-pack of beer and a 12-pack of pizzas every night for a month, hey, who am I to tell you, right? But on the other hand, think about how you can just move that ball just a little bit forward. Again, if you're doing YouTube content creation, can you just get out one video a week? Maybe it's not even the best video. Don't even worry about making it the best video. Just put out an effing video, because it makes you feel better, right? You're actually still doing something. And also, you'll be surprised how all that little stuff builds up. Again, if I do one video a week, which for me is really not much of anything, at the end of a year, that's still 50 videos. Right? That's not too... 50 videos, one video a week, that's nothing. Well, but 50 videos is something, right? Again, even if you're trying to do YouTube content and it fails, that's still something you can put on your resume. You can go to the job and say, well, I was doing this YouTube content creation thing. Look, I did 50 videos. I couldn't make a business out of it, but look, I did 50 videos. That's something. Again, like I say, simply putting Pluralsight on and just listening to it 1 hour a day. Right? 1 hour a day is 365 hours of education. And In a year, right? And think about this, a 3 credit hour course, if you go to college, a 3 credit hour course is the equivalent of 40 hours of education, right? If you go to normal training, so if you go for, you know, your MCITP or whatever, they're normally in 40-hour courses. So if you can do 365 hours, that's 9 classes. Right? That's almost 2 semesters of education, the equivalent of education you can get in a year, simply by listening to something 1 hour a day. And even if you don't listen to an hour a day, half an hour a day, you know, that's still horrible with math. 182.5 hours of education. All right. Again, when I got my MCSE for NT 4.0, it was only 80 hours of training for the MCSE program. So you would still get, you know, that's the thing. I mean, think about that. So the MCSE NT 4.0 program that I went through, it was 80 hours of training for that, plus 40 hours for your CCNA. That was only 120 hours, right? So even by just doing 1 hour or something a day, you would get that kind of education. Kind of get what I'm saying there? Just do a little bit. Just do a bit. So anyways, that is my thought on grief and change and all that. Poor little Tonto is not with us anymore. But at the end of the day, it was kind of one of those things, you know, you're looking at him, and it's like when the skin starts splitting, you're just thinking to yourself, this isn't going to end well, right? We had taken him to the vets. I really didn't understand why they couldn't do, what's it called, debulking. I would have paid for debulking. Debulking is when they go in there and they kind of like just literally just chop off chunks of the cancer. But we had taken them to like 6 vets at this point, and every single one of them rejected debulking. Like, I'll pay you, but they're like, no, it's a bad idea. But yeah, so the cute little boy just got this big old cancer. And again, what are you gonna do? There are days you really, really, really hate being an adult. But you are one. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, yeah, that's about all there is. So here I'm sitting on a nice wood chip pile, and we're outside of Glacier National Park now. So Glacier National Park is absolutely beautiful, but it's a little ironic because now all the glaciers are basically gone. So, what do they say? Like back in like 1850, when this place was first like discovered, really, what do they say? There was like 100 glaciers back then. By like 2000, there were like 20 glaciers left. And by 2020, there will be no glaciers left in Glacier National Park. So we saw one of the glaciers. We've been here a couple of days now. We saw one of the glaciers the first day we were here. And yeah, it's not. Is that a glacier or is that dirty snow? I don't know. Right? So yeah, not too many glaciers here in Glacier National Park. And if you want to see a glacier in Glacier National Park, get your ass here like now. Because officially they figure literally all the glaciers will be gone by 2020. Gone out of Glacier National Park. So there you go. But absolutely beautiful place, absolutely beautiful place. There's this road, it's called like the Road to the Sun. Probably one of the scariest roads I've been on. It's just this narrow road with this just sheer drop off on one side. You kind of inch up that at about 10 miles an hour, but absolutely beautiful, beautiful area. So yeah, we are here for the next few days. We've been here for a couple of days, so we'll be here for a week total, and then we are off to Seattle. So hopefully I'll be able to do a lot of Silicon Trailer meetings there, and yeah, just keep going on. Again, like I say, I mean that's where you have to figure out with your life. Like I say, especially as a tech professional, is you have your personal life and you have your professional life. And again, they're actually one life, right? And so you have to figure out where that balancing act is. So like with us, we're not replacing Tex and Tonto. We're not getting dogs anytime soon. Because there's a lot of these opportunities that I would like to take. Again, I've had a lot of people question, will I come to Europe? will I go to these places? And the thing is, without having a dog, I mean, I loved having a dog, I really did. I mean, corgis are amazing little beasts. But, I mean, the ability to literally hop on a plane and it doesn't matter. Like, hey dear, I need to go to Europe for a week. What? Right? You get and you lose and all that kind of stuff. So those are the kinds of things to think about. Because again, like I say, so many people wallow. Again, like I say, with the whole having kids thing. Still get my head around that completely. But again, I mean, how many people, you know, they just focus on, oh, my misery of, but it's like, but this is how the world is, right? I find that funny with people, is people want to argue with the world. The world don't give a damn. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so funny. I see all of these people that are trying to like argue with existence. They're trying to argue with reality. They're trying to tell reality how it's wrong. And I just don't see how you win that argument. There is no place where I see how you win an argument with reality. So yeah, you know, go through your acceptance, go through grief, go through your acceptance, and then figure out what it makes available for you. Because again, like I say, too many people, they don't see all those opportunities, and that's the difference between people that become successful, people that do things with their lives, and people that just spin in circles. Is in order to stop spinning, you have to in fact stop spinning. But again, so many people get so focused that they can't get out of it, and that's where, like I say, you just take those little tasks. I don't care what it is. You just do what you can. Again, if it's moving the ball forward a millimeter, fine. If you can move it forward a yard, fine. If you can move it forward a mile, hey, God bless, right? But it's that you move it forward a little bit, because by doing the work, by putting effort outside of the grief that you're going through, it allows you to break out of that cycle. Because if you don't break out of that cycle, it just doesn't matter. And like I say, for us, it's so important. Again, with factory workers, with miners, with cooks, with a lot of professions, they can just be spiraling through grief. They can just be spiraling through for decades. And they still get paid at the end of the day. They still get promoted. But again, like I say, that's not our field. Every day you should be thinking about how to make yourself better. Every day you should be thinking about how you'll be obsolete in a year. You know, you should be thinking about all of these things. And if you do that, you'll be successful. And if you just spin around in circles with whatever, you won't. Yeah. So anyways, with that, I will call it a day and go back and see how long it takes to upload this video. I do have to say, though, I think somebody needs to make furniture out of like wood chips. This is like the softest seat I think I've ever sat. This is like great. I feel like Lazy Boy should come up with their wood chip collection. Yes, we only use the finest wood chips for our wood chipper line of Lazy Boy. You can, oh my, can you imagine? Oh, that'd be great. You could make like a Lazy Boy out of wood chips. If I ever have a living room again, I just want a pile of wood chips in my living room. This is really nice. Again, I try to give you guys like ideas for businesses or whatever. I think you guys should come up with like wood chip furniture. You probably can't use wood chips. There's probably some reason that using wood chips is a bad idea. But I wonder if you could use like fake wood chips. Could you make plastic wood chips that you could put into a pile? And then you could, I don't know, this is good. This is like, oh, Calgon, take me away. This is really actually nice. I really want some wood chips. Anyways, with that. Yeah, if I ever get a living room again, I think I want a pile of wood chips in it. This is like really comfortable. It's kind of like fun to play with too. You can be like, wee, wood chips. Yeah. I don't know why you guys listen to me. I'm a nut. I don't care. Anyways, with that, we will call it a day. But think about that, wood chip furniture. I bet you that could be the next unicorn startup company. I want my 1% if any of you guys do it.